So Superman was pretty good. Hello all, long time no see. If you're new here, very nice to meet you. And if you're not, welcome back, I hope you stay a while. If you're here expecting what my previous video said my next video was gonna be about the nature of jester's privilege in popular media, I still think I'm gonna get around to that eventually. Not on the chopping block just yet, might still be down the pipeline, we'll see. As I said in my intro, you guys know that I'm gonna play things pretty fast and loose with this. However, I wanted to try something new with this video that I've never done before, which is see if I can catch the Superman algorithmic wave. We'll get a little bit more in depth on my thoughts as to why I wanted to make this video a little further down the line, but before we got there, I did want to give a summation of my thoughts on the movie itself. It's really front-loaded. That first hour is kind of a lot to process, and it throws a lot at you. Specifically in the realm of some kind of harder sci-fi comic book concepts that it chooses to throw at you, and I would argue it works in the movie's favor because the speed at which the movie chooses to throw things at you is the speed at which the world chooses to throw things at Superman, so you feel really entangled with the character's struggles. Understand that you're going there and that you're signing up to watch James Gunn's Superman. The second you recognize and acknowledge that, and not that you're going to see this perfect Superman movie that you had in your head, that you're there to see a specific artist's take on this version of the character, you get on board with where the movie's going, and I would argue that you'll have a more immediate enjoyment experience in the long haul. I did have some thoughts, especially in the lead up to this movie's release over the past week or so, regarding a comment by James Gunn, the backlash surrounding that comment. Now, I want to make sure that I don't butcher things right off the bat, so I do actually have the direct quote pulled up here. I mean, Superman is the story of America, an immigrant that came from other places and populated the country. But for me, it is mostly a story that says basic human kindness is a value and is something we have lost. Now, the first time I read this, I had two kind of takeaways from this sentiment that James Gunn expressed. With the first one being, there's no way in the almost century of this character's existence that this is the first time something even remotely close to this sentiment has been expressed in an interview or in some kind of transcript or by the writers themselves. But the second takeaway I had from this is there was definitely a deliberate nature to this statement when James Gunn said it, which, you know, doesn't add up at all. I don't see how there could be any possible reason why James Gunn would feel a need to be careful about what he says online in case of some possible archival that could impact his future. But I did want to use this as an opportunity to get some sort of more comprehensive understanding of why people got so up in arms over this so fast. However, I would like to preface this point with something I believe to be a mild spoiler, but I'm also going to attempt to keep my spoiler free. I know I see the redundancy there, but it has to do with more of what the movie chooses to deal with thematically, but I'm not going to tell you why that is or what the conclusion to that specific story is. However, Superman 2025 does choose to get into a bit of the nature as to what people believe about Superman because he is an alien, specifically in terms of projecting values and intentions onto a person that they don't know and they don't know their full story of. For those members of my audience that had any preliminary background experience with the show My Adventures with Superman, the angle that this story takes will actually be a bit of a pleasant surprise to you in terms of the things, without getting into too many spoilers, that show chose to commit to and what they chose to kind of walk back on. My first extrapolation based on what people felt about the movie has to do with Superman and the nature of his character and how he's understood being good idealized. People going into a Superman movie understand that the author of the text is going to treat Superman like his values and his decisions are supposed to be the idealized good choices that a person is expected to make. To take that a step further in terms of cinematic adaptations specifically, idealized Superman through Hollywood's lens can thus be reverse engineered into the equation of Superman is Hollywood's expectation of idealized good. Thus, if right-leaning members of Superman's audience go to this movie expecting pure solace and turn your brain off excitement, but then find themselves presented with the idealized good, this challenges them. It creates discomfort in them and gives them a reason for why they don't want to watch this thing that they're excited for, which takes you into the unfortunate oxymoron that those members of that audience with understandings of Superman's character should realize that they are going to be told what is good. However, certain members of the audience don't want to go to this movie to be talked down to, and they don't want to feel as though they are being talked down to. Those are two completely different things. However, I will admit wholeheartedly that a lot of this is founded in speculation and inferences based off of what I understand in a limited capacity about both the nature of the character and the nature of more extreme right-leaning perspectives that have any sort of aversion to being challenged. However, there are some things we have seen actual precedent for in terms of the right's interactions with what they have deemed as woke Hollywood. Now, several creators on this platform have already broken down in much better depth than I could hope to at this stage the nature of Hollywood and its intermingling with centrist politics, military propaganda, nationalism, etc., things like that. I am going to link some of those creators in the description below in case you find that this video just doesn't quite scratch that itch that you're hoping to have. But a wider takeaway I do want to establish is that there has always been a conflation by the right between Hollywood's politics and what they think Hollywood's politics are. Hollywood is a centrist enterprise. That is how Hollywood makes money. If Hollywood truly only appealed to leftist tendencies, then Hollywood would not be the revenue-generating monster that it is. This is not just on the national stage. This is especially prominent in the international stage as well. For example, I'm going to briefly and superficially allude to the amount of scenes that were shot that alluded to queerness in its loosest form with the briefest amount of runtime possible so that they could be cut out for any contingent of international releases to the whims of the Disney Corporation. So now that we've kind of loosely broken down a series of factors as to why this could be agitating the given group that it is agitated, I do want to circle back to an earlier point that I said, which is there is no way that James Gunn was the first person to say this in the century of Superman we've had. I would thus like to present to you my thesis for the final act of this video: Superman is an immigrant story. Now, amongst the comic book community, it is already pretty ubiquitously known that Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were born in Cleveland to Jewish immigrant parents. It has thus been alluded to and argued by a series of mouthpieces. I would personally identify myself as one of them, that the nature of Superman's otherness incorporated with these stories presents a valid enough body of evidence for us to suggest that the work is allegorical in some regard to the struggle of an immigrant. A refugee who is forced to flee his world in dire straits and assume a new name amongst the people with whom he now resides as he starts to build his identity from the ground up to fit among these people as though he is one of them. So I don't want any of you to leave with the notion that James Gunn is the first person to ever regurgitate this. I would like to take this opportunity to supplant what would usually be a more eloquently articulated conclusion with personal takeaways. I truly think if you are truly, surely, and genuinely mad that James Gunn said this, or that Superman now has an affiliation with this, if you're truly mad about this, I'm mad at you. This is gonna sound more targeted than you may feel you deserve, but I think you're dumb and mean, and I think you're using this as an opportunity to propagate dumbness, meanness, and negativity amongst your peers. But the more kindness that we can extend to one another, the more we can make the world a better place. But until then, bye, thanks for watching, and thanks for being my place to vent. See ya.